Okay, welcome, Stephanie. I'm so excited to get you on the show. I'm glad that we were able to work everything out to get you on today. Um, if you don't mind, would you give a brief introduction of why you joined the military, what branch you joined, how long you did, and then what you're doing now and how you got there?
Okay, sure. I joined the Air Force right out of high school in 1996. And I spent 24 years in the Air Force. I retired in 2020 in California. Um, kind of always had it in the back of my head that I wanted to do something entrepreneurial, but a couple thoughts had crossed my mind, and lo and behold, I decided that I was going to open a coffee shop. So I own a shop. I've owned it since 2019, started the process, and then about a year and a half into it, I took over a roastery from another female entrepreneur who was kind of retiring out of it. And I just signed the lease and met with the architect on my second location.
Wow, that's so exciting. And you said you're
Mhm.
in California.
I am, yeah.
So that's not an easy place to have a coffee shop. I feel like there's
It's
one at
not
every
easy
corner.
to it's not easy to own a small business in California. I will attest to
Yeah.
that.
Okay. So, I guess we'll just start from the beginning. Like, why did you join the Air Force? What did you do? I think you said you had multiple jobs, so I'd love to hear all the different jobs you had in the Air Force and just what that was like.
Sure. Yeah. So I joined the Air Force. I didn't exactly have a solid plan when I was in high school. I thought that I wanted to, go be a doctor. I was interested in that, and didn't really like my options to try to figure out how to pay for college. And my best friend in high school was talking to an Air Force recruiter, and I happened to go with her on one of her appointments. And it just sounded good, and it seemed like that was kind of what I should do, or it like fit my needs, I guess, if you will, at the time.
Hmm.
So after I graduated high school, I took the summer off, and then I joined, or I had already joined, but I did what they call the delayed enlistment program, and I left
Hmm.
in November of that year. And so I just, yeah, I just didn't know kind of how else to pay for college and to like, plus I lived in a small town. I grew up in Illinois, and I knew that there was a big world out there, and I just wasn't sure how to figure out how to explore it or afford it or any of that stuff. And of course, the recruiters do what the recruiters do and tell you all
You'll
sorts of
see the
things. And
world.
so, yeah, make some promises that I learned not long after that weren't exactly true, but
Hmm.
it all worked out.
Yeah.
Um,
Anytime I have a friend that's thinking about joining the military or a friend's kid, I'm like, take me to the recruiter with you because I am not afraid to tell them that they are lying to you. Like, they have quotas and they get bonuses for getting you into certain things, and all they're trying to do is keep their job and not get in trouble. So,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. I had that same experience. I would tell people like, "Hey, talk to me before you do something
Hmm.
crazy."
Yeah, I will literally go to the office with someone if they're thinking about joining because I can call anyone. I have no problem.
Yeah, same. Yeah. So I joined the Air Force, and I actually was smart enough to come in with a guaranteed job. I came into
Okay.
the Air Force working as a lab technician in the hospital. I did that for a few years, deployed after 9/11 as a lab tech, and came back. And in the hospital that I worked at, it was a 24-hour hospital, and I was on shift work after different shift work, and found it really difficult to take college classes because my schedule didn't align with any of the semesters.
Hmm.
So I came up on an opportunity where I could, I at a certain point in your enlistment, you can change jobs, and so that's what I did. I applied to go work in computers, and nowadays when somebody says go work in computers, most people understand what all that is, but this was in the early 2000s, and I really did not quite know what I was getting myself into.
Yeah.
Um, and so I went through that training, and I did that for a couple years, and it wasn't really kind of my cup of tea, if you will. And so I had an opportunity to change jobs again, which I did. And I got into like more of program management. Um, and then I took a little break from active duty, and like started school full time, and then went into the reserve, was in the reserve for a couple years. Um, and then went active reserve for a long time, on and off different, you know, assignments. And then when I made E7, I applied to be a first sergeant in the Air Force. It's kind of, it's kind of like everybody's mom. um, I really loved that job. I deployed in 2014 in that job, and got to explore the beautiful land of Afghanistan for about 7 or so months. When I came back, I it was time for me to not be a first sergeant anymore. You can only do that for a certain amount of years. And I had the choice of going back to my old career field, or picking a different one. And when I did that, I chose to work into the RPAs, which is basically the drones, for lack of a better description. Um, and did that for a few years until it was time for me to hang it up. I was tired,
Yeah.
if I'm honest. I appreciated all the opportunities I had, but I feel like I kind of just did what I could do throughout the whole time. And although I made lots of great friends and had some great experiences, I never really felt like I found my place, if you will.
Mhm.
Um, and then when I decided to retire, my parents live in California, and I wanted to be close to them. So my last assignment was actually at Beale, and I retired out of
Okay.
there. So I stayed.
Okay. And what part of California are you in now?
It's Northern California. We're probably an hour from Tahoe. I think that's probably the best description most
Okay.
people will know. Yeah.
It is beautiful up there. I've done a road
It,
trip through that area. It is awesome.
yeah, I love it.
Can you explain the difference between reserve and active reserves?
So a typical reservist will do their minimum commitment is a weekend a month and 2 weeks. In sometime during the year, most people do it in the summertime, but you can do those 2 weeks any time of the year, pretty much. That's the minimum requirement for a reservist in the Air Force. Um, and an active reservist, basically, depending on where you're assigned, if active duty has a like a sort of a handshake deal with the local reserve unit where we kind of supplement when they're shorthanded.
Mhm.
There's opportunities where active duty will say, hey, we're short. We have a temporary shortage. A lot of times it's for like a year. Um, so they'll put it out there kind of like as an online, job application nowadays. But you apply for something that falls in line with your experience or your training, and you basically have to interview like a regular job for it. And if they pick you, then you're on active duty orders for that time frame. Some of those
Okay.
assignments can be 6 months, sometimes they can be up to 3 4 years. So um, and that's kind of what I did is I found different opportunities within my career field to work. It was I liked it in one sense because I was able to kind of control my career a little bit more than I could on active duty. Active duty tells you where to go, when to go, and how to get there.
Yeah.
And as a reservist, I liked it because if I wanted to apply for an assignment in a different state, and I could. If I wanted to move, I could. If I didn't want to move, then it was my choice. So I feel like that was just better for me. I really liked the opportunity to have a little bit of say in my career. Um, The drawback to reserve for some people is you can stagnate. If you don't want to move, you can stagnate. You might not progress in the ranks very quickly. There's kind of, when I was active duty, we kind of thought that the reservists just got rank just smacked on them anytime they asked for it, and that's definitely not the case.
Yeah.
Um, you can be stuck in a rank for longer than what an active duty person might be. And so that was probably the only drawback is that you could get it, but I ended up retiring as an E8 and I was happy with that. So and
Yeah,
I
that's
got to
awesome.
control where I lived, which was nice.
Yeah, there's my parents live in northern Michigan up on a lake like way up north, almost to the Upper Peninsula, and but their neighbor's grandson just switched from active duty Air Force to reserves, and his reserve unit pays for him to fly from Michigan to California every month to do
Yep.
his duty in California. That's insane. I didn't know
Yeah.
that they would go that far for you.
Well, they don't do it for everybody. You really have
Yeah.
to be in a career field that they need you.
That's what I figured. I
Yeah.
figured he had some special like qualifications or skills that they were
Yeah,
willing to accommodate.
for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. Um so let's talk about being a woman and joining the military. So um I guess like what was it like when you first joined? And just I don't know, did you feel the need to like prove yourself or work extra hard as a female? And then once you got up into the senior enlisted ranks, like how was that being a female amongst everything in the military is male dominated? So what was that like?
Well, I could probably talk to you for a long time about that question.
I'm all ears.
Yeah, and I probably tell a similar story as most women do, but I think when I first joined, I was very naive to like what it would be like per se. I was young and I was hopeful for the world, and I thought that if I did my best, that would always be enough because um you know, high school doesn't prepare you for that. So there was no
No.
preparation, and I didn't have anybody that I knew in the military that was gonna be able to mentor me. So I
Hmm.
kind of went in with blinders on, and that actually might have been a blessing in disguise because I feel like I was sort of oblivious to that for a little while. I didn't go in with any sort of preconceived notions or any bias, which probably was good for me. Starting out in the hospital, I didn't really experience it too much because it was, probably equal, like 50-50 male female, and
Yeah.
I had a great time working in the lab. In fact, some of my closest friends are the ones I made in the very beginning of my career, and communicate with many of them still to this day because we just shared a great bond. Um, So I think my younger years in the Air Force was a lot easier. Um, and then I sort of, as I progressed through the ranks, felt like I started experiencing, or maybe my eyes were just open to the reality of what I was facing. As some people might know already, that the military is about 20% female. And you don't really notice that until you sort of make rank and find yourself in meetings where I was a lot of times the only female in a meeting of 10 or 15
Hmm.
people. Um, and I probably specifically, I think of incidents when I was in meeting, and I was I think E6, E7 by this time, and was in meetings, and I would have ideas that were contributory to the meeting, but I felt like nobody was like listening or paying attention. I sort of felt like when I had an opportunity to talk and say something, it felt like the room was disconnected, like people were sort of having sidebar conversations, or
Hmm.
just kind of like, yeah, uh-huh, okay, that's what it felt like to me. And there was one occasion where I had something and I sort of like I had picked up on how some of these meetings went, and so one of my peers, who was a male, I had a conversation with him before a meeting about an idea that I had. And I had mentioned this idea in a previous meeting and it got discounted. And so when we went into that meeting, I said, hey, because he agreed, he thought it was a great idea, he was on board with it. And so I said, hey, when it comes around, when we do around the room, can you know, speak how you feel about that idea? And I'm telling you, all eyes were glued on him. Everybody was like, yeah, that's awesome. Let's do it. Let's create a plan. Let's go forward. And I remember at that very moment, I like felt like I realized my place. And it hurt. I mean,
Yeah.
it was kind of a defining moment in my career where I really realized how difficult it was. And when I look back and reflect on my career, some of the stuff I was oblivious to or naive to, and I look back and I think about specific things that happened that I didn't realize until reflecting, is like, I know it now because now I'm in the civilian world and I've had a hard time transitioning. I think I've spoken to a lot of female veterans transitioning because I am, rougher around the edges. I'm not soft in terms of like I'm not soft spoken. I am, uh I'm more masculine than I am feminine in a lot of situations, especially when I walk into a room and I might be one of few females. I feel like that what happened in my career is I ended up creating a masculine version of myself basically so that I could have a seat at the table. Um, and there were other times where I had support of my male counterparts, and I actually had issues with female counterparts because when you go up in rank and you start, it kind of gets a little competitive after you hit E7. You have to kind of like make yourself be known. You have to kind of like put yourself in positions so that you can be seen as somebody who can handle the next rank because you meet a board and all of those things. And of course, when you put together your accolades, they have to be better than the next person.
Mhm.
So it's more competitive. And so I had to be competitive with my male counterparts, but I also had to be competitive with my female counterparts in a very different way. And sometimes I think it's no secret that we all understand that sometimes females can be terrible to each other.
Yeah.
And I didn't subscribe to that. So a lot of times if I felt like somebody was that way, I would just kind of fall back because I wasn't going to, for lack of a better description, kind of lower myself to the level of like, you know, saying anything mean about another. I came from the mindset of if I see another female working, and I still do this in my I have a new peer group, right? Female entrepreneurs, I have a different peer group. And as soon as I see that there's a female owned business, I am all about it. I
Yeah.
will go to extremes to support and promote because I I understand like how difficult that it is. And then um experience it in the military was a little bit different, but I think that like I'm trying to find my way. I'm 3 years out of retirement and I'm trying to find my way into softening and becoming a little more feminine than I have
Yeah.
been for the last 24 years.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'll ever be able to go all the way because it's just who I am.
Mhm.
It was difficult to get through. I think that there was a couple opportunities where I could have made chief at E9. And I got beat out by some people that I felt were part of the good old boy club. And so
Yeah.
I think that my merit, the things that I accomplished in my career should have earned me that spot. In fact, I sat in a lot of positions where I was the interim because they felt enough for me to put me in an interim position, but I could never get hired for it, if you will. And I think that's when I got to the point of looking at retirement. I think that's what it was. I actually retired. When I retired, I was an interim chief of a squadron. So as an
Wow.
E8, that was an E9 position, but I had been doing
Yeah.
it for I think about 8 months, and I ended up training the male that got promoted to E9 to take that position. So um, I just was like, you know what? I am good enough, and if I'm just tired of trying to get to that point, trying to find that seat at the table, and I just realized that I was destined for something different.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's how that went.
I think you were right in saying that like every female, especially a woman that like picks up some sort of rank in the military, will experience that and go through the same struggles that you did. I so for the Navy, like you talked about, you have to do like a promotion board to promote to E8. Is that correct? For the Air
Yeah,
Force?
the Air Force promotion board is for E8 and E9, yeah.
Okay. So for the Navy, the board starts after E6. So our huge like rank step is getting to E7, and that's a chief. And I it my first duty station was on a ship, so there were only 15 of us, and I was an air traffic controller, and we were just this tight knit like family, and I never experienced any like jealousy. I always felt like my voice was heard. I was good at my job. I promoted quickly. And then I get to this air station with about 88 air traffic controllers. And here comes this like, I was 22 when I got to this place. I was an E6. So I was just barely old enough to drink. And I was already like a staff NCO, I guess, technically. And they're like, who is this chick? Like everyone just they did not I had to fight for my seat at these tables, and then just the competition to get seen to E7, and I had all this free time because I was new and didn't have like the qualifications that required me to work as much as everyone else. So I took on all these jobs, and just like the sabotage and the um I don't know, it was mind-blowing to see like the difference in, I don't know if it was just like this special group that I had of people that were very kind, but I remember being warned before I went to my second command that like not everyone is going to look out for you, and that was yeah, mind-blowing, and it really hurt. Um but where I was leading with that was a big reason why I left. So I made it to E7 my last year in the Navy, and I just kind of noticed all of these. Well, I had always noticed the problems and how, like, same for you, like, people just wouldn't listen to you the same that they would a man with the same idea, which is stupid. But um, do you think, like, have you ever thought about what, like, the solution to that would be? Or, like, a big reason why I left is because I had two choices. I could either stay and fight to be like the change that I want to see in the military, and but I just like couldn't, I don't know. I don't have the right answer and I don't have the solution. And that was a big reason why I was like I just need to protect my health and well-being and just leave a situation that's not good because I couldn't figure out how to fix it. So do you think that like do you have any ideas on what like the fix would be?
I honestly, I don't think so I think it's the same question as what we would ask as a country of why
Yeah.
we can't get past issues with race, why we can't get past issues with sexuality. Um, I don't know that there's a fix. I'm
Yeah.
hopeful. My oldest is 19 and my youngest is 12, and I look at them and I'm hopeful because they were raised by me, so I raised them to be good humans. They are the type, they're boys. They're the type to they've when they were younger, they came home from like, you know, school with these little certificates that were like most helpful, all of those little things, and I was really proud of that because I look to them to help change the trajectory of where we're going by showing them, hey, this is this is how we should look at other people. We should always look to the idea that most people out there are just trying their best. If you see somebody struggling, obviously maintain safety for yourself, but if you're able to help, then help somebody. So I'm hopeful for, the Gen Zs, if you will. I'm a Gen X. So I'm hopeful for the Gen Zs to help change that trajectory. Um I'm not sure that there's ever going, I mean, I feel like it's one of those things that's kind of like it will stand the test of time. I think we might go through some iterations, maybe not in my lifetime, of where it will be better. But I feel like we have a tendency to overcorrect in this country with stuff. And, if they're not marginalizing us, they're just going to find someone else to marginalize. I feel like that, like, if you think of it as we focus as humans on, there's always going to be a winner and a loser in every scenario. And I feel like that's just human nature, and we probably won't have a fix to it. I think that there needs to be a certain amount of masculinity amongst in terms of like military mindset, because you have to be strong. You have to, be able to handle things. But I feel like that maybe we could find a way to figure out, to redefine what strong looks like.
Yeah.
you know when I talk to my husband about stuff like this all the time, and he makes comments like, I don't understand why the world doesn't understand how strong women are, the things that you guys endure physically and mentally, and how we're wired different. And um and it's like, I'm glad he sees that. But I think just looking at the fact that we have to redefine what strength looks like.
Yeah. I think some of the best leaders that I've had in the military are ones that weren't afraid to not be like everyone else, and they were still true to their beliefs and stood by what they believed in before they had the extra power on their collar. And um, I think we definitely need more of that for sure. Not even just in the military, but with like, I think people let the success and authority or power kind of change who they are, and really just sticking to these like core values beyond your job makes a huge difference too.
I could not agree more. I think I have no idea what it's like in the corporate world, because I never lived in that life, but I feel like
Mm-hmm.
there's probably some similarities in that, to where if there's always competition to get a higher position or a higher pay, that you're gonna have people out there that are gonna step on others to get up the ladder. And then you're going to have other people. I Not to like toot my own horn, but the leader that I was, is I recognized where all of my weaknesses were, and I would sort of surround myself with people who were strong where I was weak,
Mm-hmm.
and work together like as a team. And then understanding that whenever I would meet new people, or whenever I found myself in a position where like I taught some leadership classes, and whenever I was in a position where I was the guest speaker for something, I always started out with and if any of my friends hear this, they're going to laugh at me, but because it's something that I've always said, is when you come into a group of people, you have to realize that if you think of us as a Thanksgiving potluck, um, not everyone's gonna be able to bring the turkey. You gotta have somebody that brings the plates and the napkins and the forks. And if you come into a situation where you're the leader of a team, like appreciating everyone for what they're bringing to the table, because if we are all looking for the person who's gonna bring the main course of the dish, that's gonna be really shitty dinner.
Yeah.
Because it's not gonna be, and it's kind of funny because that conversation goes into like people share stories about when they had potlucks at work, and it was like, whoa, we all know that there's always one person that's like, yeah, you bring the soda, you're not
Yeah.
cooking. um,
But
but
they'll
I
bring the
mean,
best soda they can find.
yeah, right? And there's the person that's like, "Yo, I'll bring the napkins because I know I can't cook." But the thing is like that's what makes the meal, right? You can't.
Yeah.
So when you look in your group of people and you're looking around and you're trying to build a solid team, that's what you need to be looking for. And I think to the person who can't cook and can only bring the napkins to dinner, if you focus on the fact that they are able to bring napkins, the ownership and the pride in their work is going to show through that because you saw them. And the
Yeah.
reality is people want to be seen, people want to be heard, people want to be appreciated for what they can bring to the table. And that's kind of how I did my entire career, is like just meeting people where they are and appreciating that piece. There's no harm in challenging people to try to get them to be better, to do better. But if you, like I said earlier with my kids, if you go from a standpoint of understanding that everyone really is trying to do their best no matter who they are, and appreciating that piece of them, I think that like it makes you it makes you happier too, because then you're not having unrealistic expectations of people around you.
Mhm.
Um
When, I'm sure everywhere does this, but when, I was leaving, like, my last week, which was called checkout week, and I was doing all my, like, exit interviews with my chain of command, and they always ask like, what have we done right here and what did we do wrong? Like, are we headed in the right trajectory, or what suggestions do you have for us to get better? And I think that they always like cringe a little bit waiting for like some bomb to drop about like something crazy horrible. And to every single person I told them, like, I don't have anything negative to say because I don't believe, not don't believe, but I don't like personally complaining about something if I don't have a suggestion for a solution. So any
oh,
problems that
amen.
I
Yep.
had, yeah, any problems that I had um, are obviously not big enough for me to take the time to suggest a solution to you. So I'm not going to waste your time with it. But I, what you said earlier, that people just need to be like appreciated. And I said, I think that um, like recognition could go a long way, and not like you don't have to give more awards, you don't have to give more days off. Just literally walking into our work center and giving someone a pat on the shoulder and being like, you did a fantastic job yesterday, like thank you for keeping these aircraft from falling out of the sky. Like, just literally, thank you for coming to work. Thanks for being on time. And I told all of my chain of command, like, you're doing a good job. I see that you're working hard, and I want you to know that I appreciate you. But I need you to just remember that, like, people need a pat on the back. Even these 40-year-old 6'6" men that work with us that act like they're too cool to get some praise. If you literally shake their hand and tell them, hey, thanks for coming to work, it'll just like brighten their mood just a couple bits. But it is crazy how those tiny affirmative words go a long way.
In your career field, I have a couple friends that were in ATC, and that's a high stress job. Oh my gosh! Kudos
Yeah.
to you for being able to do that for as long as you did, because that really is a challenging career field, and I don't know that a lot of people realize that.
Yeah, I always say the people make it stressful because they test you for like your, I don't know how entry into the military goes, but they pick all type A personalities. We are all strong-willed and stubborn, and we are all right no matter what. And that's a great trait to have when you have pilots questioning you and you're like, no, turn right now or climb now. And
Yeah.
we can be confident in our decisions. But when you get 80 of us in a room working together, it is horrible. It's so toxic, and like it's just kind of what you're going to get when you get all type A dominant personalities together. So working with them was way worse than the stress of controlling aircraft. But I think it's the training that is more stressful from a outside of my personal opinion. There's a lot that you have to go through to be like fully qualified, and then every new duty station you go to, you start from zero again and have to work your way up.
Mm.
And so I think that's what makes the job hardest.
Yeah, there's environments that's inappropriate to say what people call those environments, but I can appreciate it.
Yeah. Um, did you find yourself, your friends that were in the Air Force with you that you worked with, did you have more male friends than female friends then?
Oh yeah, I mean, inherently it just happens that way because if you work with, 12 people and there's only one other female or whatever, it just happens that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um and so in my personal life I feel like because I had to you adapt to your environment. And so when you're 24 years in an environment where you have to learn to kind of speak the language or you're going to get shoved in the corner. um, and so I think that I can connect with men easier than I can with women just because by virtue of the way that my life was, for so long, for all of my formative time, as a young adult, was spent learning how to fit in and speak the language so that I could be part of the group, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't always fare well with their wives. That was probably the most difficult part. I would come in and be like excited to meet their wives and be like, "Oh, I heard so much about you and like, I'm glad to meet you or whatever." And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times they would not be military wives. They would be civilian wives. And I would get sort of like side eye, like just very unwelcoming in some situations, or like kind of stand back. And then finally, I had a wife just come out, and I was like, is there something like I feel weird about? I'm a pretty vocal. I'm a communicator by trade, so like I'm just open and honest. And she said, "Well, honestly, I'm kind of jealous. You spend more time with my husband than I get to." And we're good friends now, but like I joked about it when she said that. I found it really funny, which she did not find that funny. I found it funny because a lot of wives don't understand that on the job, their husbands are farting and belching and
Oh
just
my
being
God. Yes.
being completely in no way, shape, or form attractive to me in any way. And like I looked at them as my brothers. So when she said that, I laughed because I thought, oh my God, if you only knew how
I
gross your
wish I
husband
didn't
is at
spend as
work.
much time. Yeah.
I'm like,
Oh my
there's
God.
there's no attraction whatsoever. I mean, as a rule,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't. When I was single, as a rule, I would never have dated anybody I worked with, regardless, because nobody wants that drama.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was appreciative of her for sharing that with me because I think for so long I just didn't understand. I thought something was wrong with me,
Mm-hmm.
on why I couldn't connect with my coworkers' wives. And then that kind of opened my eyes to be more understanding of like how they might be feeling. But yeah,
Yeah.
I thought it was hilarious because I was like, you know, I didn't want to offend her because obviously she's attracted to her husband, but I was just like, if you only knew how gross your husband is at work. Like I'm
Right?
one of the guys I'm one of the guys there. So like they're not afraid to just be themselves around,
Yeah.
which is um, you know, I guess society looks at it as like locker room banter and stuff like that. And I guess the one good part about that is I don't get offended easily.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like, okay, whatever, it's just that. But yeah, long answer to your question.
No.
I did have more male friends, but that was just by virtue of who I worked with.
Yeah. I have some of the best friends I've made in the Navy are guys, and they were all in relationships, and most of them married now when we became friends. And once I realized that like we were going to be, true friends beyond our duty station, I told them like anything that you need me to do to your girlfriend, fiance, wife to like make her feel comfortable with me, I will do it because like our friendship is important. And ultimately, it'd be cool to be friends with your wife too, but like we were friends first, and I don't ever want your wife to feel uncomfortable or like you feel like you
Yeah.
have to hide being friends with me. And the same thing happened to me. This girl, they were in a long distance relationship, and she was like, or she didn't tell me, but she told her boyfriend, my friend, that he was like, no, she's just jealous that you spend more time with me. And I was like, that made me feel so bad. And just like, I'm sorry that I work with you. Like, um,
Yeah.
but it was, I guess, out of all problems you could have, that's a good one instead of like her accusing you of something that's not happening or
Yeah.
moving to like your business. So you started your business your last year of the military then, right?
I
And
started the process. I didn't open until after I retired, but I was working night and day trying to apply for permits and working with contractors and also making sure I could learn everything I could about being in business, all of the little nuances that people don't
yeah.
realize that are part of being a small business owner. There's just so many little things. And I'm 3.5 years into it, well, 3.5 years into being open, but 4.5 years of going through this process. And I feel like I still learn all the time, like
Oh
all
yeah.
the, finding and connecting with other small business owners and just kind of, conversing with them and learning from them and doing that. So yeah, I did a lot of the background stuff the last year I was in.
So did you immediately go into a brick and mortar business, or how did that work? Did you get like any grants or financial assistance to open that? I would assume, or
No, so I don't know. I'm sure the Navy has something similar, but when you like 6 months to a year before you leave, you go through the transition assistance program. For us,
yep.
it was just yeah. So, um, which kudos to the military for really working to try to find programs to help people transition out of the military. They're still missing the mark, unfortunately. A lot of the stuff that they talked about was how to get jobs as a civilian on base. Like they spent so much
Yeah.
time, helping people with their VA claims or helping people get GS jobs or contractor jobs. And so there was very little about the rest of the transition period. So unfortunately, I had this wild impression that the Small Business Association they actually have a veteran sort of separate veteran office that helps, veterans with small business stuff. And when I connected with them, I learned very quickly, and although it was later in the game, that unless you're going to be a contractor for the government, there is almost no assistance out there for an entrepreneur leaving the military. Like there's no special anything. Nobody cares that you were a veteran unless you're going to go and try to get a government contract. There's a lot of stuff out there for government. There's grants out there if you want to start a business that the government can look at you, as a woman, minority. There's grants out there from the government to work for the government. There's nothing out there for just regular old small business.
Hmm.
So I did not have any, at least from my experience, I didn't have any grants or any of that. We basically pulled from savings. My husband pulled from some of his investments to kind of help get that going. Um, and so we just kind of piecemealed and I bought secondhand furniture. I bought, none of so the timeline is January 2019. I I signed a lease on the space that I wanted and began the permit process. And when I first started, I thought, okay, I was going to retire at the end of 2019. And so I was like, okay, by the time I get all of this in order, we'll be good to go. And I was converting a real estate office into a restaurant, which I don't recommend anyone doing that unless you really love the space. It's difficult to do. And so the permitting process through the county in California and all of the regulations that you have to go through for any type of restaurant, it took 18 months to get through that process. So way longer than I thought it was going to be. So I ended up not retiring until March 2020, which was great timing because COVID. When I finally got my final opening permit and everything April 2020. And of course, as you know, that was knee deep in the middle of COVID, and it was very uncertain on whether we should even open our doors because, we didn't know what the heck was going on with COVID at that time. I made the decision to go ahead and open because I had rent to pay. So we just, I pulled up my big girl panties and we opened. And just made it happen. But a lot of lessons learned in that whole process.